I can just imagine you like with books doing the TikTok dances with High Republic. Oh yeah.
They had a giant panel at Star Wars Celebration that it sold out seating. Like people couldn't get in anymore because of books. Saw Gerrera's in all of it, by the way.
Yeah,
everything.
Exactly.
Video games.
The Saw Gerrera verse. He is the Force.
Dude.
May the Force.
The Force will be with you. Always.
Welcome to Star Wars Uplink, your place for everything Star Wars gaming, the TV shows, and the movies. And today, we're expanding a little bit to cover the books as well. As always, I'm joined by Sydney Laurel. How are you doing?
Doing good.
And we're joined by Eric from Youtini.
Hi guys, thanks so much for having me on. This is so exciting, and I've just missed the milky sound of your voice, Sage. I used to hear it far more often, and it drifts so lovingly into the ears in person. So I'm really glad to be able to experience this for a while.
It's good to be heard by you.
Oh, but thanks for having me. I mean, this is my favorite thing to do is to talk about Star Wars books and the NFL, but I get tonight's Star Wars books. That's okay.
Yeah. You get to do the NFL somewhere else.
It's coming soon, baby. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you. And today we're going to be going over some of the things you need to be looking out for if you're either getting into books or you're just, hey, I've been reading books. I need to know what the heck's going on here. And then we're going to get a little bit of homework today on some beginner guide to Star Wars books, which I'm super pumped about. So let's hop right in.
Just you reconsider playing that message for him.
What's going on with Star Wars books? I mean, I was hardcore into the Star Wars books for so long. I worked as a librarian for 3 years. I was all over it. And then they just kept on coming. And I was drowning in the Star Wars books.
I regret to inform you that the Republic has been lost. No, that's still happening. That is still absolutely happening. The deluge continues, which is great, obviously, to an extent. The last couple of years of Star Wars books, I guess I'll say very simply, the roster of authors has increased a ton, and the projects have increased, which are both great. Because I think the last 3 to 5 years especially, we've really gotten a lot more different kinds of Star Wars stories. We have a lot of guys who don't just look like me and Sage writing books. We have a lot of...
great.
It's amazing. We have folks of different backgrounds and bringing different characters. And there's like romance novels and starship novels and like political intrigue novels. So essentially right now, Star Wars books, I would say, are as vast as they've ever been as far as content goes. Now, practically, I'd say... this year, 2022, and I guess 2021 have really been defined by, one, the biggest thing in Star Wars books right now, which is the High Republic Initiative, which is a book and comics only, right? It's talked about at Comic-Con now. It's talked about Celebration. These are all books and stories that take place 200 years before The Phantom Menace. And for my money, it's the best quality we're getting right now. These are 100% original stories. The only characters that are familiar is like Yoda. Everyone else is new. There's just blank canvases.
That's just because he's old enough to be
there.
there.
He's old as hell, guys. He was there. But like they're such good stories because they're really getting to create brand new mythology. And as readers, it's like you're on the ground floor. Like no one saw the movie before you. You didn't have to rerun in. Like the books have been out for a year and a half at most, and some of them are coming out later. So that's kind of one side of Star Wars publishing, which is all the High Republic stuff. And there's again, comics and books, and the first of what I'm sure are going to be many, unfortunately, shameless plugs. Over at Youtini, we have literally created an entire HQ landing page for that initiative itself. That includes a whole section of the site that's just for that. It's so big.
It's massive, right?
It's
so you have
huge.
They were hyping it up too, like big time. All of the different authors that got together in this big meeting years ago, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we're working on something big." I originally thought it was a video game just because.
Why wouldn't you? Star Wars
Uplink. Exactly. I'm all about the video games, but then I was like, "Oh, hey, I was a little bit disappointed when it was books and comics. I'm not gonna lie here,
right.
but from all of the stuff that I've been seeing, like it's just been like they had. Okay, we'll see what this High Republic stuff is all about. Okay, it's getting better, and it just seems like they cranked it up to 11 recently.
Yes, absolutely, because the whole initiative is essentially 3 waves or phases of content, and we just got through phase 1 about spring of this year, and that included 3 adult novels, which are the main stories. So for any listeners, any viewers, if you just want to get the main story of this to start out, 3 adult novels. It's a trilogy. We know trilogies. It's Star Wars. But then each of those adult novels was accompanied by a young adult novel and a middle grade novel that gave you more stories, more characters. And then within that, there were also a regular comic from Marvel that was coming out, and there was a comic from IDW that was coming out. We also got a couple audio dramas that came out. So, like, however far you want to go, there's all these different things. Like, okay, you can get the main story with this, but then you can get this, and then you can go here, and then you can go here. So that's what's been really fun about it. And, like, massive is really the scale that is, I think, most appropriate. And this fall, next month in October, actually, Phase 2 is beginning, and they actually have brought on a bunch of new writers. The main folks are kind of still there. They're called the story architects, and they're the 5 main are still like helping the story, but they have more writers that are bringing more stories and things. So that's super fun. So that's one whole section of fandom, and like there's like High Republic TikTok and High Republic Twitter, and like that's its own thing.
Wow.
Aside from that, you got your.
I could just imagine you like with books doing the TikTok dances with High Republic.
The amount of time I spend on TikTok is intense, and the amount of ideas that I have that immediately leave my brain is also very intense. Because I'm like, there's some people doing amazing things on here. I don't quite have the time.
Yep.
So that's been great. But then we have books like some of them I hear here next to me have been like our regular, quote unquote, regular Star Wars books. Like we just got The Princess and the Scoundrel, which was Han and Leia's honeymoon as a book, officially now in canon. Great. We got an Anakin Obi-Wan about that business on Kid and Nemoidia and Brotherhood. Awesome. We got a book with Luke and Lando after Return of the Jedi. Great. So like there's still books that are coming out that are just kind of expanding the Skywalker saga in that way, which is super fun. And I like it because at this point, not only are we getting almost a book a month of some sort, for the most, sometimes we're getting more than that, but it's really showing how everyone that wants to read a Star Wars book, you get something at some point. Like whatever you like to read, whatever authors you like to read, if you like to read more of like the hardcore fantasy stuff, there's going to be stuff for you. If you missed the hardcore gritty war stories of nameless faces and so there's books for you. There's trilogies all over the place. Thrawn got more stuff because he's Thrawn. Like, it's been a wild time of really exciting content. And also, like, most of these books, I believe every book I have on the table next to me, at least within the last year, has hit the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
That's amazing, honestly. Like, coming from, like, the old Legends days where it's like, there are Star Wars books to now they're a massive thing.
It's huge. And we have stuff like Light of the Jedi, the first High Republic book, which started the whole High Republic thing, like ranked, I forget where, but it ranked like pretty high on the New York Times for a brand new thing with no recognizable characters on the covers or anything. They had a giant panel at Star Wars Celebration that it sold out seating. Like people couldn't get in anymore because of books. And it's just, it feels exciting right now, which is super fun. And like for your viewers and listeners and stuff, like we got Jedi, not Fallen Order, but
Survivor.
The Jedi series, is that what we're calling it? Like, is
I
that?
think so.
I mean, great. It's kind of dumb. Like I love it, but I'm like, what are you?
Yeah.
Come on, Star Wars, the Star Wars Jedi games. Anyway, the Calcast.
I thought it was going to be like Fallen Order and then another subtitle, but no, it's Star Wars Jedi and then Fallen Order and then Survivor.
Yeah.
Wars : Jedi : Fallen Order : Survivor. I guess that also might have been odd, but
yeah.
But like they're getting Cal Kestis is getting a book between the two games, as you guys know.
So freaking hyped about. We talked about it on last episode, and like the door to the different stories that are available to be told in a written format. You just have a deeper level of. I mean, the character development in a game is more at least relatable to something like a book or a book series because you have that extended amount of time.
Yeah.
But you get more directly into the mind and the motivations of these characters. And I think that's what's going to be super exciting. You can't see it, but behind my head I've got
still can't see it.
Battlefront.
Oh yeah, I saw that Inferno Squad. Yes.
Which is one of my
Fantastic.
faves.
It's
so good.
Yeah, and it's exciting because I think that as book readers and comic readers over the last few years, we've really seen the walls between content kind of fall down a bit. Like Fallen Order had that comic miniseries all about Sierra, right? Sierra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like when that came out, so Dark Horse got in the mix again, and like like book characters like Chrysanthemum are coming into Book of Boba Fett, and he was in a comic, and it's like they're really realizing it's like when movie actors started doing TV shows.
Yeah,
they like in the 90s couldn't do it. No,
you killed your career if you went to TV.
And now Julia Roberts is on Apple TV Plus. Like, it's an amazing line, and that's what I like Star Wars are doing right now. It's like I don't care where you started, you can kind of go wherever, and it provides such great accessibility for anyone. Like you said earlier, if you haven't been reading or you haven't been watching everything, like that's always the problem, right? Is can I watch Mando season 2 if I haven't watched it? Man, I don't know, but we're trying. We're trying.
Make up your own mind about it, but here's some of the facts and some of the things you may need to know.
Exactly. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the toys next. I need my High Republic Funko Pops. That's all I'm waiting on, and it's been.
I feel like
now.
that's like the legitimate. Like that's like when something's legit when it either gets like a Lego set or like a toy, and Fallen Order has gotten both of those things.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got BD-1 and you've got Cal's lightsaber. And Cal's lightsaber either almost got an award or did get an award.
It's nominated
for,
still, yeah. Toy of the
nominated
year.
Toy of the Year.
I love it.
From a video game. That
yes.
Disney's been like, yo, we don't really like video games. They're really weird, even though like if you combine all of the video games and then like movies and TV show, games still outnumber all of those combined.
Yeah.
Like, they're huge, but we haven't seen that cadence of something like the book series where you get these varying amounts of stories. It feels like there's so much weight put on the video games because there's like one, like EA had 5 in the 10-year span that they had the license.
And it's so weird. I go so back and forth on that too, because obviously as fans we want volume, we want content, but you also want it to be good. And it's like, do I want to wait a few years to get a Fallen Order or something that's gonna be that good? Yes, but also, I mean, when Squadrons came out, I'm like, this is gonna be the next big thing, and that was cool because it had like decals like from Alphabet Squadron, which are the book series, like amazing. And then, anyone still playing Squadrons?
They shot themselves in the foot so badly with that game, but that's a side tangent and a rant for another day because
I'm still bitter.
So many thoughts about.
Still bitter about what was it? What was that move that people started doing? The pinballing or the where you could drift and get speed. It's like the Mario Kart thing, but people did it in Squad.
Yeah, they had drifting that they figured out somehow. What? They had the amount of the meta of that game was insane to where they could take down a destroyer within the first 5 minutes of a game, which is just unmatched. I did esports casting for Star Wars Squadrons for a year. And it was just mind blowing to see, like, oh hey, when we did a competition and Uplink had a squadron, then we competed.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So we went from that to where like the next 2 weeks, it went from like, oh hey, this is pretty fun to, oh my gosh, this is how far you can go with the game. Like,
yeah, and that's one of the things I find with Star Wars games. Of like, I love Battlefront 2. I am a EA, the new one. I am a truther. I love it. They fixed it. I put more hours into that than any multiplayer game in like the last decade. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I feel like when the books can also get into that point of like, I'm not too worried about too much interconnection or too much like all the things that came before. I can just read a character and find out what they are. And I found that with a lot of the later books, as opposed to maybe some of the Legends stories, which I do also like a good deal. A lot of the newer books are being way more character focused than like plot focused. It's less about the technicalities of necessarily all the story arcs, depending on who you're reading. It's more so like you're in the mind of this character. I want to feel it more intensely. And it makes you want to read until like, with the flashlight at 2 a.m. under the covers being like, I need to know if this person's going to be okay because I just met them and I love them. And like, that's the best kind of book to me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. We've been talking about it in regards to Andor. People on our podcast are probably sick of us talking about Andor, but like,
deal with it. It's going to be amazing.
Still hyped about it. Because we're finally getting a story for the TV shows where it's not building out the I call it the MCU, the Mandalorian Cinematic Universe.
Yes.
we've got the MCU over here, but now we can also have things like Andor where it's no Jedi, no fan service. It's just what can we tell a good story with in the Star Wars universe. And we've talked about this, like we need the books where it's like we need the books, the movies, the TV shows, the games, all of it to start getting to the maturity level of like, oh, we can have something that is in regards to, I don't know, let's just say Han and Leia's like honeymoon.
Yeah,
like
where
that
it's
level.
just a story, and
Yeah.
it can be connected, and it's lovely if it is.
I want to see a detective thing in Star Wars. Like, give me a detective story on Coruscant trying to track down this thing. You have like the backdrop of this gigantic Star Wars universe, but you also have like, oh hey, there's stormtroopers instead of police officers. There's this instead of that. Like, you can have some pretty interesting stories with the backdrop of Star Wars,
Which you also actually just had in the High Republic comic, Trail of Shadows miniseries, which was like a film noir type mystery.
Ooh.
Yeah,
See, that's
'cause
what I'm talking
exactly,
about.
genre. Like it's
Yeah.
that's what I always liked about, actually hilariously, the MCU. When I talked to folks about like back in the day, what I liked about it was that it wasn't so much like superhero movies like Winter Soldier, for example. It's an espionage story that happens to be in Marvel. And that's like, I think the best Star Wars books is like, this is a romance that is in Star Wars. This is a war story that's in Star Wars. And I love Jedi and I love Force lore and I love Kyber Crystal lore. But that's like, the story comes first and then the label just gives you the universe to play in and the characters. It also helps you get a New York Times bestseller list. That's not being. Come on, we can be honest about it. That's okay. But yeah, and it seems like that's where we're going.
I hope we get more of those varyings of stories, because we can. I think it's big enough now that we can have those deeper dives into the ideas. Because I think, I don't know what your thoughts are, but like Book of Boba Fett, we enjoyed the watching experience of it, meaning like we can have something to talk about on the podcast, we can talk to people about it, and just have something Star Wars that we can rally around. But it didn't really hit home for me. Same with Obi-Wan, season 2 of Mando a bit, because they were more focused on how can we as quickly as possible make our own Star Wars cinematic universe, instead of being like, let's tell a good story. Let's expand on what Mandalorian is. Let's expand on what book like Boba Fett is. But Boba Fett was just another tool which is perfectly fine if it was put forward that way.
Right.
So it was made to push forward Mando.
Ultimately.
Yeah. Like, I don't think it's an accident for me. Like, my favorite episode of Book of Boba Fett was the Mando episode. I thought it was like
Exactly.
the best.
Man, that's like my favorite Star Wars that has been
was
made.
incredible.
It's so good.
Yeah, and now for Obi-Wan, for me that was its own thing, and I love that, and I think that those last 2 episodes of Obi-Wan are my maybe favorite things that have ever happened in Star Wars film. Like, Ewan McGregor, I adore him, and little Leia. If you hey, all of you
So
on the internet,
good.
if you go after I will come for you.
Exactly.
If you go after
We're right there.
little Leia, this precious child.
I would have rather had on like
Obi-Wan didn't really hit for me. It was another one of those things where they had a different motive, which was to give Reva more story, which I'm perfectly fine. I would rather have her own story,
Which we'll definitely get.
I mean they've already
Might be in
announced
my
that we're
realm.
getting something. Yeah.
It might be in my books comics world.
Yeah.
But we'll
But
see.
like
it turned into the Reva story versus the Obi-Wan story. But I mean, Leia,
little Leia, I would love to
Just
have her
please
have
let
her
her
own show.
I hope that she liked it enough, because she's a kid. She doesn't have to.
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
she had a good time. I hope her parents are okay. I hope they're like, yeah, you can do another one. Because also, I need more Bail Organa in my life, man. He's my
Yes.
boy. Like, any Jamie Smiths we can get. I don't care if you're clearly 20 years older than you were in the last one. I don't care. Not a single shit is given. I need more of him in everything. But yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things. Like, looking forward, like we're gonna get stuff like the Acolyte show when that comes out. It'll be in the High Republic too. And I think that by that point, there will be so big of a foothold of the High Republic content that people that watch the shows, which is obviously the plan, will then be like, oh my gosh, let's check out the books that are about them, and they're gonna like. Disney is amazing at branding. No one ever makes content because they want people to love. They're making money. That's fine.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
We're adults.
we understand this.
We've established this.
we clearly know this.
Why didn't they make this game just for me? Because they made money off of it.
Yeah.
Why was Assassin's Creed Valhalla so big? I don't know, but they made $1 billion in revenue with a B. So like, it worked. But I'm hoping that the more we go on, like, Star Wars will just become so ingrained within itself, and I think that's one of the things that is not necessarily hurting, but is harder for the MCU now because the MCU and the comics are two distinct worlds.
Yeah.
And like which is fine. I mean, Marvel Comics have been doing universe resets for forever, but Star Wars has an opportunity to really have like whatever you're reading, whatever you're watching, it all happens in this place.
Unprecedented amount of interconnectivity, like amazing. I understand all of the pain and sorrow around the resets and making legends, but also I think there is it's a cool experiment to watch, saying, hey, everything we make is a cohesive story.
Yeah.
And then if
Saw
it's
Gerrera is
not-
in all of it, by the way.
Yeah,
Everything,
exactly.
video
It's
games.
the Saw Gerrera verse. He is the Force.
Dude, Forrest Whitaker just cashing those checks. I applaud him.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember.
I mean, that's what I'd be doing if I was in
yeah.
Star Wars. I'd be like, put me in everything. I don't care if it's a video game, if it's an audio drama. Like, put me in there.
Yeah, what are you doing? Nothing much. It's like, oh, hey, you were in Fallen Order, you were in Rebels, you were in Clone Wars, you were in Rogue One, you were in a couple books, you were in a comic. Do you want to be in Andor? Yeah, okay. Sure.
Boy Gullet.
We're gonna. So, I don't have anything else planned. Sure. I'm not busy. Like, that's all it is.
Yeah.
That sounded a lot like Crocker from Fairly Odd Parents.
It is a delicate line.
It is.
Book on it. Very
Yeah,
good parents. Yeah, it is. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's going to be super fascinating to see how they expand that side of things, because it's been so long since we've had a Star Wars movie. We're going to be diving even deeper into like what is a modern day Star Wars movie post COVID, post Disney Plus. What is that? What does that even look like? How does that fit into the broader
Post-saga,
scope of things?
Like, you don't have a number.
Exactly.
Which is, I mean, I also love Solo, right? It's that's actually one of my like.
Yeah.
Both Rogue One and Solo, like Rogue One, I didn't know what to expect. It was Hypeville for sure. Solo, I was so against, but then I got into the theater and I loved it. Like, so much fun.
This is a blast, and they marketed it at Denny's. Like they're like, oh, the issue was people don't want to see Han Solo. I'm like, no, Last Jedi.
And you released it 6 months after the last movie.
There were theaters that still had Last Jedi playing, and I'm like. So I hope that they learned the right lessons from that, but I am also interested if, Rogue Squadron is technically still slated for December 2023.
Yeah,
sure,
totally.
Jan. But whatever that first one is, like, especially from the books and comics world, it's like the last couple movies, we had the journey to the movie books
That's
and the
true,
comics.
yeah.
And like for a couple months, it just changes the landscape of the book world. And now when you have things like the High Republic going on separately for now a few years and building all this momentum,
That is such a good point.
what do you then jut oh, by the way, here's a Rogue Squadron prequel. Now, I mean, sure, I hope, maybe.
Yeah.
But also, is that a bad idea for a movie that they're hoping I don't know. I'm thankful for a lot of things. I'm really thankful I'm not a Disney marketer. Because
It almost seems like they're getting to the point where they're going to have these individual universes within the universe. Like they have the movies, and I think for a while they were saying, "Hey, we need to have everything tied towards the movies. That's what we're going for." And then they found out, "Hey, the TV shows, they're doing great. They don't necessarily have to tie to the movies at all. You can have books and comics that fuel the content and the characters and the settings of the TV shows, but they don't necessarily have to intertwine all that much." Does that change now that the movies are, hey, I think we're going to see much more one-off movies now. And I think maybe we won't see the journey to Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, with Rogue One, we got Rebel Rising, the YA novel with Jin, which is a great one. If you want like a Jin Erso story now that you're in Andor season, Beth Revis wrote that. It's incredible. And we also got Catalyst, which was the story of Galen Erso in credit.
Yes, that was. I forgot. Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
I forgot
welcome
about
back.
That book.
They were so good. And then with Solo, we got one of my favorite books of all time, which is Most Wanted by Ray Carson, which is a YA about Han and Kira when they were younger. And then you got Last Shot.
Yep,
Which
I've got that behind me.
Yeah, so you had two each there, and I think that could
Which
be
I got from
fine.
the Youtini subscription way back in the day.
Same. I was working and was a subscriber back in the day. But like, I think with the new movies, it makes sense to have that package together. But like, I've been frankly pretty surprised on the lack of book tie-ins with the shows. Like, there's not been a Mando book. There was a Mando book that was going to happen that got shelved for who knows why. My theory is that it was very, very big on Cara Dune. And no one will say if that's true or not, but that's my theory.
Yeah.
But like, we didn't get a huge Obi-Wan book. We got books about Obi-Wan, like we got Brotherhood, and we got there's a book Padawan with him as a kid, but none of them necessarily tied into the series. And Book of Boba Fett, we didn't get a Boba Fett book, and it feels like they want to kind of squeeze out as much story as possible in the shows. Like, they want to leave room for season 2 and season 3 and season 4.
Yeah.
And if you write part of it in a book, I guess you kind of cut off that ability. So maybe the movies, if they are actual one-offs and not just one-off, wink, wink, we'll see if we crack $1 billion, then maybe they will be like, okay, let's do some kind of hype, because I think that people are going to have to remember how to see Star Wars movies again.
Yeah.
Because we got really used to it.
And now we get the TV shows, and we have this like spectacle that releases every week over a set amount of time. Like, it's going to be very interesting to see where we go forward with that. But I think with that, let's take a little bit of a break and hop in and talk about some beginner guides to Star Wars books.
Excellent.
Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
Star Wars books. They're this gigantic universe of things. So many of them come out. I mean, it's so hard to keep track of. But thankfully, we have the wonderful folks at Youtini to help us out here. Eric, like our lovely guest here, Eric. How do we get into this gigantic world?
Great question. The easy answer, before the practical answer, the easy answer is it's different for everybody. It is going to be, everyone reads differently, and I think the problem with reading as an adult, frankly, is that when we were all in school, we had assignments, and we were told what to read, and we had 15 minutes at the beginning of English class where you had to have your book and read. Like, we had times that we had to read, and we just got in the habit. And then we all went to college and didn't have any more assignments unless you were an English major. And then you stopped reading for fun. So I think it's, one, figuring out what you like to read again, and then figuring out what kind of Star Wars book gets you there. And now the practical answer for that is that over at Youtini, when we first started the company, and then we just kind of revisited again this year, we had this list called the Essential 6, which are 6 books that we've decided with canon and legends that we think are 6 of the best books in Star Wars, but also represent kind of 6 great paths you could go down. So if you start with one of these and you love it, you can take that author, take these characters, take timelines, and then you can kind of just branch off from there. And if you also, for those of you that really want practical stuff, at Youtini, we have a full-on Youtini reading order where we've listed every Star Wars book in a, attempt.
It's impressive.
To give you, here's, if you want to go top to bottom, it's what the closest we could get. But we also have a bunch of guides for, if you want Han Solo books, bam, here you go. If you want Rebellion books, bam. Picking an area and going with that is kind of my favorite. It's kind of like picking a game developer, right? It's you like From Software games, great. You're going to play the Souls games. And then you find your next developer, and then you play those. And you kind of do it in chunks. So
even directors.
Yes, exactly. Because you're never going to watch every movie. You're never going to watch every show. You're never going to play every game. You're never going to read every book. So my overall best recommendation for folks here, and I brought my props. My table's usually closer to me, but my cat was sleeping under my ottoman, so I couldn't move it. And
you can't move.
You can't move a cat. So my number one recommendation for folks, if you've never read a Star Wars book before, or if it's been a while, is this book here, and it's called Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. This book came out hilariously as a Journey to Star Wars The Force Awakens book. It was up to episode 7, and this book essentially is kind of a Romeo and Juliet-esque romance about 2 kids that grew up on the same planet. One's rich, one's poor. But in a time of the Empire, this is pre-episode 4, they both decide to they're gonna join the Empire and become pilots. And that's how they're gonna escape their planet and blah blah blah. And then the large galactic civil war comes around, and they find themselves idealistically on either side, and duty versus honor, and then there's like the rebellion versus empire, and you hit most of the main points of the original trilogy through the eyes of these two characters.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing love story. It's fun. And it also, for folks that know the movies or know the universe, it's very familiar. So it's a perfect blend of that. And Claudia Gray, for my money, she's still writing a bunch. She's one of the architects of the High Republic. She is, for many folks, we actually do get called out sometimes online and in Reddit for being very much into Claudia Gray.
I don't see a problem with this.
Yeah, sorry about it. She's amazing. And she's one of the nicest people ever. But yeah, that's first bit of homework. If you ever want to read, that is always my go-to recommendation. I gave it to my girlfriend before she had actually seen the original trilogy even, just to read it as a book, and she was fine.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's a great one to give to friends, too.
Easily read, too. Like, the way that Claudia Gray writes, it's very easily digestible. Like, it's very smooth, I guess is the way I'll put it. Like, you can chew through that book really easily.
Oh, yeah. And it's also a YA novel. So for those of us who, for whatever reason, maybe grew up and were like, oh, it's young adult, I can't read that. That's not for me. This will get rid of that stigma right up the top, because there's the only difference between the two is that the characters are teenagers in one and they're older in the others. Like, I don't know what English teacher told us it was wrong, but it's lovely to have that realization. So that's the one that I would start with. And that gets you in the canon universe. It gets you all the new stuff. All of it counts still. And you get to meet Thane and Sienna, who are two of my absolute favorites. It also is nice that Sienna is a woman of color. So you're starting off with not just white folks in Star Wars, which is lovely. On the completely opposite end of the spectrum. If you want to go back to, like, Sage, some of the books you were talking about that are now legends, which are still wonderful stories. We really try to emphasize that, like, just because that timeline has essentially been cut off, it doesn't mean those stories didn't happen and those books, you can't read them. Like, that they're still great. They're still Star Wars.
They're still there.
Yeah. And there's no better way to do that than with Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire from 1991, which was like the first real expanded universe book. You meet Thrawn for the first time. It's right after Return of the Jedi. This was episode 7 for folks for about 20 years before Force Awakens came out. Yeah. It's just been re-released, if as folks can see. I'm holding up the Essential Legends Collection version. They're republishing a lot of the older books in these trade paperback size. So it's bigger than a mass market, smaller than a hardcover. And they're getting brand new cover art. And it's really showing that the current publishers are putting money into the old books still. So they're still pushing them forward. And this is just, it's a Star Wars movie in a book. And if you want to see... Oh, Han and Leia, they're going to have twins? What? Oh, Luke is what kind of person? Who's Mara Jade? Like, all of that is in this book. And it's a classic. It's a classic. Completely different universe than Lost Stars, but if you want to go back to the Legends, you got over 200 books in there you can read. It's still great. And we actually did have some folks on the team reread it lately. It's not problematic. It's like, it's not like super sexist and racist. And like some of those old books can't go back too far. But like, Leia and Mara Jade have agency and like actual power. And like, it's nice that Timothy Zahn, this book is now 30 years old as of last year, was writing a very good novel. And you get and if you like this, Timothy Zahn is still writing Star Wars books. So you can jump in the current canon and jump on his stuff right there.
Timothy Zahn is just like such a great world builder, and I think he does a really good job with his characters. It's hard for me to get into his writing style, but once I get into it, I can start to get through it.
Yes, Claudia. It's funny because Claudia Gray is so, like we said, accessible. You get it. It's a YA. It's quick. It's very emotional. Timothy Zahn, he was actually a physics major at Michigan State University. So like he writes like it, and you like it's.
Which is perfect for the character of Thrawn.
Absolutely. Sherlock Holmes in Star Wars. And the stuff is much more galactic, bigger scale, which is great. But it is a little more like concentrated reading. So if you're a person that reads in like loud coffee shops or places where you have your phone out sometimes, like it's a little, you might want to dedicate a little more concentrated time to getting into that world. I've like made playlists sometimes for books of like lo-fi and stuff just to, because we all have ADHD right now and it's awful. Next one I have is another Legends novel, but this is if you want your darkest of dark side awesomeness. If you love your Sith Lords, Darth Bane, Path of Destruction, which is the first novel in the Darth Bane trilogy by Drew Karpyshyn, who wrote the Knights of the Old Republic video games.
Wow.
Maybe is that an up link? Huh?
Yeah.
Hashtag branding. So this is it's the first book of a trilogy of Darth Bane, who folks may know created the Rule of Two and the Sith. There can only be two, Master and Apprentice. It goes back to when the Sith were a huge army, and he's a kind of a soldier in that army, and then he basically goes to like the Sith version of Hogwarts for a while and learns things.
Yes.
And it's got all this stuff baked into some of the most brutal dark side stories I've ever read, and not in a gratuitous way, not in a like if you're cringy around blood and stuff, there's dark stuff in here, but it won't make you sick, it won't make you nauseated like some authors really just try to overdo it. And it's really just a great story about a Sith Lord who has a mission and has ambition and knows he can get a lot of power and he's gonna do it.
Which is such a unique story too, and I think it's one that hasn't been filled in the current canon.
Not yet.
But I think that's what I love the most is the dark side aspect of the legend stuff, because man,
they go
dark
there.
side in the Legends is intense.
Yes. Yeah, and if you like the Bane stuff, the great thing about that, again, it's the beginning of a trilogy, so you can get all through those, and then there's things like Darth Plagueis, where you get a totally different style of Dark Lord, but it again kind of follows that legacy and get more Palpatine, and you can go to, then there's Darth Maul books. So what I love about that is that if you start that and you latch onto it, like you said, the Legends side has so many dark side stories, and Bane is so old, like this takes place thousands of years before the films, that some of it conceivably could still be canon, unless it's overwritten,
That's true,
which is fun.
yeah.
Which is also fun. Now, I mentioned this earlier, my I think as at this point favorite Star Wars book is Light of the Jedi. It's the first High Republic book by Charles Soule. It starts off the entire High Republic initiative, and literally if this book had sucked, the entire thing would have sunk. Like, plain and simple.
There was a lot writing on
There
that
was a
book.
lot of writing on this book being amazing. It was our Youtini Book of the Year last year, as voted on by staff and community, and it just introduces you to all the characters of the High Republic. Charles Soule has an amazingly propellant writing style. Like, there's short chapters, which any writers out there, short chapters, I love them. I will read 30 short chapters more than I'll read 10 long chapters.
It's so true. I've been reading a book called The Obstacle is a Way, and like I wasn't used to this style, but it's like every chapter is like 3 to like 5 pages, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just read 7 chapters.
You're like, I get a cookie. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Huzzah! Because we went to school at times when I need stickers. So Light of the Jedi gives you that. It also it's a very non-cynical look at the Jedi. And I think that's what it's kind of like weirdly brave nowadays to write a book that's actually like the Jedi are heroes. This is at the height. They are for light and life is their whole thing. It's about the unification of the Republic. Like the Chancellor Lena So, she's working with the Jedi on things. Like it's not they're the army. Like it's a really nice way to see. Oh, this is how the galaxy was running at its height. There's also the most dastardly villain I've read in years, with possibly the best villain introduction since Darth Vader in Star Wars, with Marchion Ro.
Whoa.
If you love audiobooks, this audiobook is great, and he has the most deliciously disgusting voice that's also kind of weirdly sexy. And they put him in a comic, and he wears a helmet. He took his helmet off in the comic, and it went all over the internet because everyone's like, "Oh no, he's really hot." So there's also that element to it where you get these
Reading behind that.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. So you get the Nihil, who are these villains that basically want to cause chaos, and they're just like destruction for destruction's sake. And the Jedi are about saving life and preserving light no matter what. And it introduces the entire initiative and some of the best characters. You get Master Padawan relationships. You see the Jedi Temple. You see new planets. It's just great. So if you read this, if you want to get into the current realm of Star Wars publishing and you're like, I got to pick one thing just to go in on, this is my recommendation just because it is so fun to be in the High Republic as it's happening. Whenever there's a new book release, whether you're on Twitter or Discord or what have you, there is an energy of being part of a brand new story within this.
Yeah.
And if you're in Star Wars books right now, this is the thing. This is the fun. This is the show releases on Wednesdays. You know, that's the closest I can get. And then our last two here, we're going back into Legends. This bad boy, a lot of folks have probably heard about because of recent events. It's Kenobi by John Jackson Miller, starring Ewan McGregor himself. Now, this was not essentially. This was not overwritten by the TV show. It takes place in a different kind of era. Because right before the show came out, a lot of us were talking before Celebration. Because we were like, we're going to talk to a lot of folks at Star Wars Celebration about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we're going to hand out bookmarks that have this list on them. Do we want a book that might be literally retconned on Friday morning to be given out? And luckily it didn't. But even if it had, it is still an incredible one-off story about Obi-Wan. It's a classic Western. A man, comes into it.
I'm sold.
Oh, he's sold.
Oh, yeah. He's the mysterious stranger in town. And there's a guy that's like, you haven't paid your taxes for the water we give you. And then there's like the sand people. Are they the bad guys? And then it is the most typical Star Wars Western ever. In the vein of those classic Western stories. And if you like this, it's really great because you might know then you like standalone stories. There's not a prequel. There's not a sequel to it. There's not Kenobi 2. This is the story that happens, and Obi-Wan has other things that happen.
Kenobi?
Kenobi, yes, exactly. And then Kenobi, III, Kenobi, IV, absolutely. Kenob. It's a whole series. Gosh, well, if they made it now, maybe. But this is one. It's an absolute classic. It also got an Essential Legends Collection version recently, so there's a very nice, cheap trade paperback for it. And if you like this, then seek out some more of the books that are just kind of one and dones. Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray is great. Dark Disciple is a Clone Wars book that's one and done. Because there are great stories like Light of the Jedi and like Bane and Enter the Empire that lead into a sequel. And we love sequels. We're IP lovers. We love that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just want a one and done book. And this is
just to
absolutely
feel
one of the
the
best.
accomplishment of saying, hey, I finished this thing.
Yeah, I read a book. That's it. I just read a book.
What book of Dune are you on, Cindy?
I'm on 5 now.
Yeah.
Wow, I started Dune before the movie. And I was like, this is rad. And then I stopped. But
60-page glossary in the back.
It's so fascinating. It really is. It's weird to be reading Dune, as you know, because it's like, I'm like, this, I don't know what's going on. And my brain's like, objectively, this is a masterpiece. I know that. But I'm also like, and then the glibbity glob went from Hirsakanadine. And then how many times have you heard the craft bird sing? It's like, what is I don't know. But also, my name is Calimini, and my name's Paul. And it's like, I don't know. That being said, that movie was a damn masterpiece, and I cannot wait for the second one.
So good. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, nerds, watch Dune.
Yeah.
If you're watching the show, watch Dune.
And you haven't watched Dune 1, where have you been? And 2, go watch it.
Yeah. The final book is the one that we actually get the most questions on when I talk about this with folks. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah. Because it's the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, which is probably the
Great
best
audiobook, too.
Yes. It is also the best written Star Wars book of all time. The prose is unlike anything else. It is the only Star Wars book that George Lucas ever read the manuscript and gave notes on and approved. So, like, because there are scenes that are not in the movie. There is dialogue that is changed. Like, not fundamentally, but, like, really gives the gravitas.
Yeah.
Like, the whole texture of everything is so much deeper and richer with all of the interrelationship and battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin is, oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Like, there's basically this phrase, where Star Wars is modern myth. That's what everyone says, like Joseph Campbell, blah, 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 blah. And this novelization really treats the events of Revenge of the Sith like a Greek epic. And he writes it in that way. So, like, there's a prologue, and I always do this. The last couple lines of the prologue are, a pair of starfighters, Jedi starfighters, only 2. 2 is enough. Two is enough because the adults are wrong and their younglings are right. Though this is the end of the age of heroes, it has saved its best for last. And that's episode 3. We've all seen the movie, but it's like that's the gravitas that this has. And one of the things that we really love at Youtini, and I love as a Star Wars book reader, is that Star Wars books are at their best for me when they have amazing character stories, but they also make me want to go back and watch the films. And they change fundamentally as I watch. I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing I loved, I now love more. How lovely! Like you put dressing on it, you put some spice on it, if you will, and like now it tastes different. Yes, Bae. Like it's that whole thing, and Revenge of the Sith does that more than any other. I think. There's other books like there's a trio of Padme books we call the Queen's Trilogy, which fundamentally changes episodes 1 and 2 because you learn way more about the siege of Naboo and how brutal it was, and Padme's handmaidens, you learn them all by name and what they do. And like, but this book, one, much like Lost Stars with YA, it kind of makes you realize, oh, film novelizations aren't just the script that they're selling for money. This is a retelling of a whole story. And it really just is a thing that will make you love a thing you love even more. Or if you're still somehow in the year of our Lord 2022, a prequel hater, grow up. But also, it's fine. Everyone knows their own thing. It really will make you realize, oh my God, George actually did craft a really amazing, epic tale. And it really gives it that weight. That level of craft is to summarize all of those books and all the stuff we were talking earlier, like, is what I really love about being so enmeshed in the Star Wars book community is that it is, one, easily the least toxic Star Wars place on the internet. Is especially the High Republic community, but also the book community. Because everyone's like, I read a 300-page book. People aren't going to read a 300-page book to make a 40-minute YouTube video about it. They'll make a YouTube video about it without reading it and talk about the woke Star Wars and whatever. But but like it's just so fun because you have these authors that are on Twitter and that are writing stuff, and you can see the artists put progress pages up, and you can watch the stories evolve book by book by book, and you see them publishers coming out. And reading is such an intimate activity, but then you get to share it so publicly and see the passion that people have creating these stories, which is why even some of the books that have come out lately, if I don't love the book, on our podcast, The Living Forest with Youtini, we do roundtables for every book where the four of us chat for 2 episodes about the book in totality. And every single time, by the end of the second episode, I love the book more, regardless, because it's just so great to remind yourself someone put all these words down and took a universe that we love and then made more of it. And
and it's not as regulated too, because like the TV, all of the problems with the TV shows I have were because someone high up who didn't understand how TV shows or movies were made put their 2 cents in. They had enough sway in the organization to where they had to do it. Otherwise, that person got fired, and that's why the problems of the movies are. But there isn't as much of that in the books or the comics because you have a lot more of the freedom to say, hey, yeah, we're going to go to the Lucasfilm story group. We're going to say, hey, can we do this story? And then, or they have, hey, we want this story about this and this area. Fill in the blanks, make your own thing, make it fun, do your stuff. Like, boom.
I mean, that's the whole High Republic happened. And we've talked to almost all the authors on our shows about it. And they said, they all went to the Skywalker Ranch. Like you said earlier, they all got to go there. And they just got invited as a squad. And they said, cool, what do you want to make? And the High Republic wasn't the pitch, wasn't the option. It was just, you 5 creators, we want to create a cohesive thing. What do you think would be a great story? Have ideas and then write it. And it's like, and there are definitely some books that get assigned. Like there is, hey, we need the Luke and Lando book that has Ochia Bastoon in it to help with Rise of Skywalker. Hey, do you want to write it? Great, here you go. We need an Obi-Wan Anakin book. Great. Sure, but there's absolutely that balance of, we're not going to give you the chapter titles. We're not going to give you all the plot points. We'll still give you maybe a title, maybe an idea. Or we'll just say, hey, we love you. We've read your other work. What kind of story would you write? Which is why, like, Zoraida Cordova, for example, is a great author who wrote the romance novel A Crash of Fate for Star Wars to help with Galaxy's Edge. She's writing the adult novel in Phase 2 of the High Republic, and it's got a lot of romance in it. And it's like, because she is writing it. Because they're like, you're still it's still the same initiative, but don't not do your style. And I think that's why The Last Jedi is one of my favorite movies because Rian Johnson made a Rian Johnson movie. That's why, like, all the people in Star Wars and their best, if they're making their thing, that's when it's best. And it's the books and comics are just screaming with that, and they are not slowing down, for better or for worse.
And it's so personal too, because you're as a writer, you're sitting down in your study, in a coffee shop, on a beach somewhere, like insert wherever you want to work because it's not dependent on anywhere. And you're sitting there for hours and hours on end, months and months to get this piece of work. And it's tying into this bigger thing, but you also have to tell your own story individually. Like it's such a unique experience. And you go like, I did not like the Aftermath series. That's not me. That's not something that I'm drawn to. But also, hey, anything Christy Golden or Claudia Gray I'm there for it.
Yeah.
Because that's their voices, and I love their voices in Star Wars.
Yeah. Like, you don't always have to be an insane person like me who's going to read every single book that comes out and every single comic. Which, by the way, our friends at Del Rey and Disney Lucasfilm, thank you. I love them. I will keep doing it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. But that being said, you can pick your stories that are for you. I mean, we've all been in the Barnes and Noble and done like the 5-page test. You know, you pick it up, like, or you buy it and then you go to get your Starbucks and you read half of it. Like, pick the stories you like. And I think if I was to give any giant piece of advice for anyone that wants to read Star Wars books or is having a tough time reading Star Wars books or whatever, don't feel like you're behind. Ever. Don't feel like you people know more than you do and there's going to be a test or whatever. It's not a thing. If you ever want to know something about a book that you don't know, join a community or find someone that knows it. Look up some video reviews. Like, do that if you'd like. And if not, just read the book. And there might be a character that shows up that you don't know, but the author will tell you who they are. You know, they're worth their salt. And I think that we just put so much pressure on ourselves as fans of this franchise to understand every single thing. Like, we're not all Alex and Molly Damon. Like, we're not able to know which Jedi younglings got killed in the temple in order. Like,
and how old they were and what planet they were from.
Riva. You know, and I think once you just fire that judge that is telling you that you haven't read enough and that you're all behind, and you just read books, because we all go to work and it's hard and our weeks are long, and your recreation time doesn't need to be a test. So jump in it because you love it. Find the style that you love. I hope, like the 6 books that I put, if one of them kind of gets you on a journey, great. Continue that path and then come back to another one and try another thing. And
there's audiobooks too. That's a way that we've had great success with finishing books.
Yes.
There's
music and sound effects in the Star Wars ones.
They're so great now.
Yes. Other audiobooks are kind of rough. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, this is so boring.
And it's so dependent on the person reading it. There was a book that I actually switched to the physical version because I just could not stand the voice. I'm like, can't do it.
It's a
I am
huge
literally
gamble.
trying to not fall asleep right now.
Yeah. I'm reading my non-Star Wars book series because we have like 2-month break right now. So I'm like, I gotta read something else. And I'm reading the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang, and I'd never got the audiobooks for them because I haven't been doing them. But then I was like, I have all this time doing dishes, and I want to finish this 800-page book before the next Star Wars book comes out. So I did a hybrid, and luckily the narrator happened to be this woman named Emily Wu Zeller, who she was Pan Am in Cyberpunk.
Okay.
And she was also Dr. Aphra in an audio drama for Star Wars, and I was like, yeah. So I got lucky on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, audiobooks can be really incredible, and there's a lot of great ones in Star Wars, but if you're finding that in one medium, maybe a book isn't really clicking for you, and again, you have the funds or the Audible credits or what have you, try switching to physical.
Local library.
Yes, digitally and physically, and they have that. Is it Libby?
Yep, Libby, Overdrive, whatever other ones they have. It's a great resource. I used to help set people up with it all the time, and it's a great resource. It works just like a normal library. They do have a limited number of copies that you can check out at a time, but like it's free. Go to your local library, set up your account, and then like you may have to renew every 6 months to say, hey, I'm still there. Boom, you've got free Star Wars books.
Not better than that. And if you're an Amazon Prime member, I will say, if you go on like the Kindle app or anything like, there is a shocking amount of free Star Wars books that are just like not even just free. Because come on, we all have Amazon. You have Amazon Prime. We all have
Yeah.
Amazon
Yeah.
Prime. Like
Exactly.
you're watching Rings of Power, you're getting 2-day shipping. So like there are a ton of free Star Wars books that are just on Kindle reading. So try it out
Sweet.
that way.
But I think with that, we're going to call it an episode. Thanks, Eric, for taking the time today to join us on the podcast. It's always great to have your enthusiasm, and I just love your personality and voice in the Star Wars space.
Thanks, man. Thanks. It's been a really joyous way to spend the last couple of years of just being able to take all the years where I had to hide a bit or pretend I didn't like certain movies or pretend things would be cool and just be like, you know what? I love it so much. I'm going to wear High Republic t-shirts. I'm going to get Millennium Falcon tattoos. I'm just going to be who I am. And I'm going to find people that are just as wild about it. And it's the best way to spend the day. So thank you guys so much for having me on. And same, I mean, it's just, Star Wars is great. Star Wars is
It
great.
is.
It's so fun.
It is.
But check out Youtini.com for all the details on the books. And we always love having the Youtini guys on the podcast. And it's awesome to see how varied and diverse and just growing that community is over there, and just how supportive of being fans of Star Wars you guys are.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it so much.
So subscribe for free wherever you listen to podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, all the places. Wherever you find podcasts, you can find this show. As always, thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.